Howdy, welcome back to Dion Talk. If this is your first time to my channel, I want to be specific that my content is designed to help you, the average person, realize that you can make work optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. And I often try to talk about how simple it is. That doesn't mean it's easy. There are some things we need to do that are uncomfortable, but it is very simple. So what I have today is Becky Nova, who actually created this community called Lady Landlords, who is reaching financial freedom in a very simple manner. And when I watched her Real Estate Rookie episode number 69, you should check it out. I was watching it thinking, this is my story. Like, this is what I've done. And at the end of this video, Becky's actually going to share how she gave herself $1,000 a month raise. So I want Becky to come on here. If you can, Becky, can you tell me a little bit about the size of your portfolio? And then I want to talk through the timeline that got you to where you are today.
We have 12 units, my husband and I. We have 12 units between New York and the Dominican Republic. And I only got started in real estate back in 2018.
In 2018, when everybody was saying interest rates have gone up and you shouldn't buy.
Yeah, it was, but I never planned on getting involved in real estate investing. It was not on my radar or even something that I was considering at all. I had lived abroad for years. I never really actually wanted to settle down. To me, buying my own personal home was not even something that I wanted to do. That was never on my radar. The only reason that I even entertained the idea was my now husband, who's an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, really moved to the United States with the American dream. He wanted to have, the white picket fence and all that. And it was really important to him to have that home base and to be a homeowner. So I said, fine, we can do it, because apparently you're supposed to compromise in these relationships. So I said, fine, we'll do it, but I'm not going to live mortgage payment to mortgage payment. So when we ended up buying our first multifamily, I am so lucky I did not lose my shirt in that, because I was not plugged into anything with real estate investing at that point in time. I was just looking for a way that I could not pay these crazy expensive prices here in New York. That was it.
So you're in New York and you're looking to buy a house because your spouse wants to get on the property ladder, which is a goal, right? How did you pick multifamily?
That was me. He wanted the single family. I said, we live in New York. We were living in the Bronx, right next to Yankee Stadium. And I said, prices are just so expensive here. If we're going to stay in this area, and we're both city kids, so this makes sense for us to do. I said, for us to be able to afford it, we really need to have like a duplex or multifamily where we can have money coming in from another unit to help offset our costs and help us. I had no idea that house hacking was a term, was a thing. I thought, honestly, Dion, I was like the smartest person ever for coming up with this totally unique strategy to be the only person to think that you could live in a multifamily to be able to help offset your cost of your mortgage. So it was my idea to kind of go with that strategy. He, as a good husband is, agrees to everything I say. So we decided to go the multifamily route.
It's funny. I think most of us that house hacked think that we're super smart and we've cheated the system. But if you look at the statistics of how few people actually do it with intention, it pretty much is that way. And what's funny with house hacking is a lot of people do it when they're renting. We're okay having roommates help us pay someone else's mortgage. But a lot of people, when we buy a property, that's our mortgage. We don't want nobody to help us pay that. So getting small multifamily is great because it reduces your expenses and allows you to save more. So I understand the first one. How did that turn into 12?
We now get to the closing table on that first duplex that we're moving into. And closing was horrible, big disaster. That's a whole nother podcast episode there. But at the end, when we finally got through it, I was then given that check for my tenants or that were already living there for the rest of that month. And I was like, I'm sorry, I just signed like my life away and just gave you a whole ton of money. And you're already giving me money? And they were like, well, yeah, that's the rent from the tenants that are already there. I literally, Dion, said at that closing table, that's it, we're doing this again. Now, my realtor and my mortgage broker and everybody else in the room just kind of laughed. One, because the closing went horribly wrong, but two, because they were like, honey, this is New York. You can't buy another property. You're going to save for years. You're going to, that's never going to happen. And I was like, no, y'all don't know me. Oh, I'm going to do this again. after that first closing, that's when I started to educate myself. That's when I went binging on all these different podcasts, YouTube channels, educating myself. That's when I learned that house hacking, which I was already doing, was a thing. But it was at that point in time that I was like, I need to find what I'm going to do. And I went down a horrible rabbit hole of all these different strategies of creative finance and how can you make this work and how can you make this work. And then all of a sudden, it dawned on me what I could do to buy my next property. And what I did was the exact same thing I did to buy the first property. Made it nice and simple.
Well, that's the point of, that's the reason I wanted you on here today, is to point out how simple this is, because someday, especially now that I've retired and don't work, I might do something that is more challenging and has more risk, like flip a property or do a rehab or use the BRRRR method. But you started investing in 2018. It's now 2020. You have 12 rental units in New York and the Dominican Republic. Someday I'm going to use one of those creative strategies.
But not today.
Were you able to get 12 with just traditional lending from the MLS? Or did you have to go out and use mailers, do flyers, drive for dollars, do all these weird things that everybody thinks is new and exciting? Or, and please don't take this wrong, are you simple boring like me?
I am simple boring like you. I have bought all my properties in New York, which, right, people always kind of shy away from investing in New York. They think you can't find deals here. I found all my deals on the MLS and I've bought them all with traditional financing.
That's the beautiful thing of it. It doesn't have to be complicated, but
right.
The podcasts with really good content creators will put up a thumbnail of, here's a 21-year-old with 80 units and it gets over 600,000 views. But when you have somebody that goes, I saved up some money, I bought a place, I house hacked a couple of them, I bought some more, it's super boring and nobody wants to hear about it. But within 10 years, and it sounds like within 4 years, you can make work completely optional. It's like people want to make this as complicated as they can.
Right.
The more complicated it is, the more reward you'll get.
And I don't get it. And same thing, I was learning after we closed on that first duplex. It was like, oh my God, do I have to go get a HELOC and pull money out? Do I do a cash out refinance? Where was the value add? What counts as a value add? I was trying to learn all of these different things. Maybe I should start knocking on doors in my neighborhood and see what else I can find. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, there's got to be a better way. I sound like an infomercial, but there's got to be a better way. And I started to tell the people that were in my circle that I was looking to buy another house. I called my realtor, the same realtor I used. I've actually bought all 4 multifamilies that I own in New York. I bought them all from the same realtor with the same lenders, I have my team. It's worked out fantastic. 1 or 2 I've exchanged along the way, but in general, I have a great team that I've now used consecutively throughout these properties. But it was so nice just to be able to call, told my realtor, hey, I'm ready to buy another one. These are the conditions that I'm looking for. I got set up in a portal. I go through listings. Yep. This one meets exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, let's buy. Job done.
That's pretty much exactly what I did. It was a slower time frame. I was in a lot of bad debt. So it was 2 years to buy the first one and then 2 years to buy the next one. But then it started to speed up, and it really is just save the money, learn your market, know where you're going to invest. Your team is important. I do the same thing. I have these agents I work with. I have these lenders I work with. I have these handymen I work with. So once you have that in place, life gets a lot more simple. I self-manage my rentals, and it takes about 2 hours a month. You self-manage yours. About how much time commitment do you think it takes for your 12?
So I feel like the biggest time commitment for me is when I purchase a new property, and that's why I love inheriting tenants, because then there's no setup that's needed. I feel like the only time that I really have to be that present is when there's a tenant turnover and now I have to get a new tenant kind of acclimated to the property. But same thing, few hours a week is really kind of all I do.
That seems to be a little more attractive than 40 to 50 hours a week at a job.
Yes, much so.
And Becky, at the beginning of this video, we talked about how you gave yourself $1,000 a month raise. Can you cover for us really quick? Because this is actually going to matter to me. How did you do that?
I listened to Dion. that was what I was able to do. So once again, buying properties on the MLS is the strategy that I go with because it's just so simple and so easy. So I found a great property. One of the biggest struggles with that property, though, was that it had very low rents. The people that had been living there had been there for decades. One of the two tenants had actually been there for about 30 years. They clearly wanted to stay, but they had a changeover in landlords. They didn't really take care of the property all too much, and they had let rents just stay where they were. So we were actually able to negotiate the sale price of the house and get an under ask offer accepted, because we said, hey, listen, I'm an investor. In order to make money, I need you to come down on the price because the rents are so low. So the owner actually did that. So we got a great price on the property and got an under ask price for a multifamily, even here in New York. Then once we closed on the property, we then were able to work with the tenants using the binder method that you talk about and teach, to be able to come up with a number that would work for the tenants. When we had that conversation with the tenants, which I have to say, the binder method was such a great way to turn what is normally that awkward, uncomfortable conversation with money. It almost puts landlord against tenant and really kind of creates this like acrimonious situation. It takes that, and the binder method really has like a great meeting of the minds that helps be win-win for all parties involved. So we were able to sit down with the tenants. We followed your strategy and walked them through the comps, shared with them what was going on within the neighborhood. And then we simply asked them what they felt their rent should be. And they asked us for a 37% increase and then thanked us repeatedly for being so nice.
To me, it's mind-blowing. And when we did a video on your channel, there was actually some comments, or a comment at least. I would never ask my tenants what they want to pay. They would say they want their rent lower. And that commenter was correct. A lot of people don't realize what sets rents. Your expenses mean nothing to the tenant. If your expenses mattered, a property that was paid off compared to a property that had a mortgage, the rents would be very different, but they're not. So your expenses don't mean anything. Area average rents set rents. So if your tenants have been there for years, decades, and the previous owner had never done any increases, and it doesn't make sense for you to be at that number, you're asking them, what do you think is fair? What do you want your rent to go to? They're actually included in the conversation, and most tenants have never had that experience. But they also know what it would cost if they moved somewhere else, what the comparable rents would be. If they're more, the tenants would ask for it to go up. And in your case, it was a 37% increase. So congratulations. And you have happy tenants. Happy tenants don't trash your property, and happy tenants don't move. If area average rents were lower, tenants should binder strategy their property owner. They should go and say, look, I've looked up all the rental comps in the area. We're 37% high, 50% high. I think we should adjust the rent. What do you think is fair? It would go both ways. With our strategies, though, I prefer to buy already occupied properties. I prefer not to have to do a rehab or cash out refinance, or refinance at the end of fixing it up like the Burr method. Already in place tenants who then adjust rents without having to do a rehab and are happy at the end of the meeting is a win for both sides. You get the raise, you don't have to do a rehab, and better, you don't have to displace a tenant, because tenants live in fear of new owners are just going to jack up the rent.
I felt this couple, I couldn't tell if they were going to hug me, if they were going to cry, because they were just so happy knowing that they can continue to stay in their same home after so many years, that they weren't going to be displaced, that they weren't going to have to move to another place and then have to come up with now the security deposit, the first month move-in. Here in New York, we do a lot with brokers' fees as well. It's minimum $6,000 to move anywhere these days. So that was definitely a concern with them. Dion, cannot tell you how fast this elderly couple in one of the units got up, got their checkbook, and literally were like, here's the new rent, here you go. And we're just so excited to actually be able to pay us that rent. I felt like they thought we were going to change our minds, but it was a great number. We really appreciated where they were willing to kind of meet us with. It worked for us, but in total, that then made it where that property actually cash flowed over $1,000 a month after expenses.
That's beautiful. So, Becky, I really appreciate you coming on here today. When I found your content, I was super excited. I have 3 kids. I have my son and my 2 daughters. I was hoping, and I'm going to slowly introduce it to them because dad can't know anything, but your community of lady landlords, Can you tell me a little bit about that and how people can find you if they want to reach out?
Sure. So Lady Landlords really got started from me now being a newer landlord and having all these situations, such as raising rent and other items that I needed to be able to sort out. And it was actually March of 2020. My husband came home. He had lost his job due to the pandemic. And he comes home and he's like, babe, like, what are we going to do? We now are down in income. And I was like, we're going to go buy more rental property. And he was like, no, babe, I lost my job. Like, no, we're not buying more rental property. I was like, yes, this is what we should be doing because we need to bring in that extra income streams so we don't have to worry about if all of a sudden one of us loses a job. That's why it makes more sense. He thought I'm crazy, walks into the other room, slams the door. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go make some friends on the internet. So I started a Facebook group called Lady Landlords. I thought it would be like just me and my mommy, like hanging out in there. But I was wrong. I was absolutely surprised. We had women joining us. We now have about 1,000 women join our community every single month. So you can find us on Facebook. For those that identify as female, can join our Facebook group at Lady Landlords. But for others, then I had a lot of other people that were asking me, well, how can we still be a part of the community and get that content? So for those people, I do have our Instagram channel, which you can find at Becky Nova 24. And then that actually turned into our own podcast. We had a lot of the same questions and I wanted to be able to answer everybody's questions. And now with a group of 30,000 women, I needed a better way to disseminate that information. So now you can actually find us wherever you listen to podcasts for the Lady Landlords podcast.
Well, again, I can't thank you enough, Becky. I really hope people check out your content. And if you don't mind, I'm probably going to reach out again in the future with questions for more videos.
Of course, I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
No. All right. So this will be my wrap up. As soon as I think of it.
Okay.
This will be edited. I'm just making sure.
Oh, yeah. I figured that much. No, leave that part in.
Just leave it in. Yeah, right. Exactly.
But not today.